Hi, my name is Richard Duffy. I'm the SAP Business One Product Evangelist, and on behalf of everyone at SAP and all of our partners, I'd like to welcome you to today's presentation. What I'm going to do is take you through a demonstration of the banking functionality in SAP Business One to explain to you how cash is handled inside SAP. Now, the banking functionality runs across a range of different modules. You can view demonstrations of each of those other modules, of course, from the same location where you got this demonstration. So let's dive in and take a look at the banking functionality. So inside the banking module of SAP Business One, there are three main areas where you'll be performing activities. The first thing is you'll be recording and managing all of the incoming payments that have come into the organization. The second area is you'll manage, of course, all of the outgoing payments, where you're paying your suppliers, paying your bills, so on and so forth. And of course, the third process is managing your bank reconciliation. So let's look at the most important one first, which is the money coming into the organization. So when you have incoming payments, the first thing you need to do is you need to record that that money has come in. So I go into the incoming payments functionality. Now, my incoming payments I manage on the basis of the customer, but I can also manage incoming payments, for example, that have come in from a supplier, or incoming miscellaneous payments that I want to then just allocate against a general ledger account. Let's say, for example, I got a check for disposing of a fixed asset. Maybe I sold an asset early and I want to record that money is coming in. Well, again, I can do that in here through my incoming payments functionality simply by choosing here that this is an account, and I just specify the GL account that I want the money to go to. But we're going to focus on the customer in the first instance. So I pick my customer name, so in this case it's Earthshaker Corporation. Now what you'll notice is that the system automatically goes in and it pulls up a list of all of the invoices that are currently overdue. So I'm able to very quickly and easily specify which of those invoices are being paid. So I can go in and I can select the invoices that are due for payment, and you can see right now it's saying that if all of those invoices are being paid, I should be processing a payment for $16,670.89. Well, there's a good chance that that's not necessarily how your customers are paying you. So chances are what they do is they send you a check for a certain amount, or they deposit a certain amount into your account, and you've got to figure out what that was for. So what would normally happen is you would go in and you would click up here on the toolbar and you would select your payment means. And then you would specify, okay, how much money did I receive? And did I receive it by cash? Did I receive it through a credit card? Did it come in through a bank transfer? Or did it come in via a check? So in this particular instance, I'm going to say I received a check from my customer, and I'm able to now specify the details of that check. The details of the customer's bank account I've already got stored against their business partner record, and that's why you're able to see the bank branch, the bank account number, and everything like that is already pre-populated in here for me. So what do I have? The customer has sent me through a check in this particular instance, and they've sent me through a check for $20,000. So I put in the amount against that check, and then I'll say okay, and now it brings me through to the screen where I need to go ahead and allocate that check. Now there's a couple of different ways I can do this. I'm just going to minimize that across and make this screen just a little bit bigger. Makes it a little bit easier for you to see exactly what's going on. You can see that the total check amount is $20,000. Right now I haven't allocated any of it. So I've got a couple of ways I can do it. I can go through and manually select the payments. So I've got that one I've selected. I've got that transaction that's been selected. I've got that transaction that's been selected, and I've got that transaction that's been selected, so I'm manually going through and selecting the amounts that I'm paying. Now what I can also do is I can go through and I can manually type in the amount that the customer is paying on that particular invoice, because they may, for example, they may send through a remittance advice, and that remittance advice may show that they're short paying a particular invoice. It's always best to try and match those payments up as closely as you possibly can, so when you're trying to reconcile, it's easy to figure out what's going on. Or the easiest thing to do is to go here and click on Add in Sequence, and that then will automatically allocate that payment for you across all of those transactions. And you can see that once I've done that, each one of these transactions has been paid in full, except for this last transaction, which the total amount outstanding was $5,518.13, but there was only $3,332.11 left over from the check, so I'm going to accept that as it is, or I could deselect that and put the remainder as a payment on account and then come back in and reallocate it later. The other thing I can also do if I want to is I can deselect all of these and process the entire payment on account, because I don't know, or I can't figure out exactly which transactions they're paying. So I've got that flexibility. But I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to say Add in Sequence. Now I'll add in sequence and everything's okay. I'm happy with the way that's going to allocate all of the payments, and I'll say Add. Once again, general ledger transactions have been created here, so it's telling me I can't change the document once I've added it, and I'm going to continue on. And that's my payment has been receipted. So we've seen a couple of different variations on the theme there, if you like, the different ways that you can allocate the payment. One of the other things you can do is when you are processing a payment, I'm going to go and we'll grab another one now, also for Earthshaker, and you'll now see that all those other transactions are now cleared, so I can go in here and I can process my payment. I'm able to process a payment in the system that is made up of multiple payment types. So I can have some checks, I can have a bank transfer amount, I can have a cash amount, I can manage all of that just fine within the one payment process, so I don't have to manage each different payment type separately. I can incorporate them all together, and you'll see that, let's say for example maybe they gave me $5,000 cash, and maybe they also gave me a check for another $5,000, so that gives me a total amount of $10,000. I can click on OK, Add in Sequence, and once again you'll see that it is paying off as much of those invoices as it possibly can, and there is just this final one which is being short paid, and I can go in and do the same thing. All right, and then those transactions are paid. So that's the process involved in receiving payment into the banking module. Now of course the next step is to process your deposit. So if I go into my deposits, you'll see that I have a number of deposits to handle. So I've got these two checks. I've got the check for $20,000 I processed and the check for $5,000 that I processed. I've also got some cash in my bank account that I have to reconcile. Right, the cash on hand is $11,000 according to my GL account, but I got $5,000 of that I want to bank. So again, got flexibility over how I manage that. All right, so I can then choose which components of this I want to go ahead and process into my bank account. So I'm going to choose my bank account. Here it is, my cash at bank. I'm able to then go and specify across here the bank name, the branch, and so on. Then what I can also do is put in some additional commentary, some additional journal remarks, and then I can reconcile these transactions after the deposit is done. So assuming I'm happy with how all of that's working, I then just go ahead and say add. Now, what it's telling me again, because I've gone backwards and forwards, it's telling me that I'm missing my bank account number. So I can go in and specify that bank account number again, and now I say add. And then it also wants me to provide some detail and specify which rows I am depositing, because remember what I told you was that you can go and just process one of those checks. So even though you've got both of those checks in from your customer, you're not quite ready to bank them yet. So you can specify to bank one or bank both. In this case, I'm going to bank both of those. And again, Business One is capturing and reminding you if there are things that you haven't done in the screen. You get that little audible ping, and you also get the message which comes up at the bottom of the screen and tells you exactly what the problem is. So now I can say add, and that is my bank deposit processed successfully. I'm then able to then, of course, go and print out a whole range of banking reports. So I can print out my check register reports, I can print out my, my bank account reports. There's a number of those different things that I can go and produce. Let's now take a look at the process involved in actually paying money out. So I'm going to go through and do my outgoing payments. I'm able to generate a single outgoing payment if I want to. Let's say I've got a supplier who wants a check today, or they want me to transfer the money into their bank account today. I could do that very, very quickly and easily. So I'm able to pick my vendor. So let's say it's Lumarx, and I can see right now that I have a number of these transactions, a number of these accounts payable invoices that I owe them, including the invoice that I created in today's transactions, in today's demonstration sessions. But I only want to pay one of these invoices. So all I need to do is select the invoice that I want to pay. So there it is. It's $33,677.47 in Canadian. But it's also handling all my multi-currency for me. So it's telling me that right now, that's actually $27,562.92. Now, before you jump in and you grab your calculators and start calculating out based on the exchange rates, I can't guarantee you that that's exactly the right exchange rate today, but you get the general idea. So it will do that foreign currency calculation for you. The next thing I need to do when I'm doing that payment before I can generate it is I also need to go and specify how am I going to pay it. So am I going to draw a check? Am I going to do a bank transfer? Am I paying via a credit card and Business One will manage that process for me? Or am I going to pay it by cash? In this case, I'm going to draw a check and I'm going to put in the amount. And all I need to do is press Control B there and it will automatically fill in that amount for me. And I'll say OK. And that's fine. I can now go and generate my check. And I can print out my check or I can do a manual check. It's really up to me how I do that. Then I say Add. Again, it's telling me you can't change this after it's been done. So that's my transaction is now processed. All right. So the next process is to do those payments en masse. So to select a number of different suppliers and draw all those payments at the same time. So in order to do that, I'm going to use my payment wizard. So I click on Payment Wizard. I'll then say Next. Now I'm going to create payment runs, and I can create these payment runs. For example, I can create a weekly payment run, a monthly payment run, and then rerun those as I need to generate those payments to my suppliers. So in this case, I'm going to start a new payment run. I'm going to call this my weekly run. And I will say that I want to only include outgoing payments here, and I also only want to pay those people whose payment method is check. Because I can select in here and I can say, look, I also want to pay those people who've got payments via bank transfer, but what I like to do is I like to keep these things separate. So I'm going to do my checks, so I'll say next. Now, it's going to ask me to add my business partners though that I want to consider in the payment run. For me, because I only got a small number of them, I'm just going to select all of them, and then I'll say next. Now it's going to ask me to put in a selection priority. In what order do I want to select the outstanding invoices for payment? So I'm going to say by due date. I'm going to say I only want to select those payments that are due up to and including today. Then I say next. Which bank account do I want to use, or which payment method? I'm going to select outgoing check. So only suppliers that have got this payment method stored against them will be selected. So I'll say next, and now you can see 2 vendors have been selected for payment. I can expand those out. I'll just say expand all, and now you'll see, I'll just make this window a little bit bigger. You'll see each of the documents that is in the system for payment, and I can go ahead and I can specify which of those I want to pay and which ones I don't. Now at this point in time, I can click on my report button and generate my recommendation report. I can pass this recommendation report now to somebody in the organization, and they can say, yep, we want you to pay that one, we want you to pay that one, don't pay that, do pay this. And then you can go in and deselect some of those invoices for payment. So for example, I just go in and I select or deselect the ones that I don't want to pay. And then when I'm done, I'm happy with what's selected, I'll say next. It's going to give me a choice now. Do I want to save this selection criteria, or do I want to execute it, or do I want to save the recommendations? Because again, I can do some more printouts and some more analysis on what do I want to pay and what do I don't want to pay. Well, in this case, I'm just going to say execute. I'll say next. It's telling me executing the payment wizard is going to generate the payment. So now I'm actually going to be raising checks, and it's going to be putting transactions through against my bank account. So I'll say yes, and the payment wizard has now been executed successfully. 1 payment was added, 1 check was added, and no bank transfers were added. So I'll now say next. Then it's automatically going to drop me into the process of printing my documents. So I want to do my outgoing payments. It's going to ask me, do I want to do a bank account summary or a payment summary? Do I want to do a business partner summary, a country summary? So I've got all these different choices that I can have. Then I'll choose to print, and then it's going to generate these documents now. In this particular instance, I'm going to generate it to an Adobe PDF document. And it's just giving me a warning and saying, hey, bear in mind you're about to produce this document. So now you can see there is that report, which is a listing of all the payments that I'm making to my business partners. So I can close that down. Then it will go on and ask me to produce the next report. Going to do the same thing there. You're about to print a payment summary report. Do you want to continue? Yes, I do. And then I'm going to save that report. And that's going to generate in a second. And there it is. There's my check summary report. So it's saying, hey, this bank account, Bank of America, bank account number, the check number, the number of invoices that are being paid, and so on. So I can now do a manual check if I want to, or I can print my computer checks. And then I'll print my outgoing payments documents, and so on and so forth. So each of those reports will be printed for me, and then I'll say next. It's then going to say, all right, do you now want to print those checks? So I'll say yes, I do. And this then gives me the flexibility to be able to print the checks. Now, if by chance something goes wrong during the check printing run, you'll see that this gives me the option only to print documents still to be printed. So what you're going to see is once I print these, it's going to ask me did they print correctly, and then I can come back in and do as many reprints as I like until I get it right. Okay, so I want my checks for payment. I want to print my checks to be printed. I want to specify the bank account that I'm going to print the checks from. Specify the posting dates and everything like that, so it picks up only the checks that I want to print. And I'll say okay. And there it is. There's my check that it's going to print, which is the one check that I'm expecting. Now, if I'm using pre-printed forms, it's going to ask me what's my next check number in my pre-printed form. So I can put in, let's say my next check number is 223, and then I'll print that. I'm going to produce that to a PDF document just so I can show you what that looks like. And it's now telling me, ensure the printer has the Bank of America stock paper. It's starting with check number 223, choose OK when ready. So I'll choose OK. It's now generating that check for me. Again, in this instance, it's bringing it up as an Adobe Acrobat document. So you can now see the layout format that's being included here. So I'm going to zoom in just a little. So you can see what I've got is I've got my remittance advice at the top and then my check at the bottom. So this is an example of a report or a printout that's designed for a pre-printed form. And once I've now printed that and I'm comfortable with it, I can say that that print status is confirmed, not printed, unconfirmed, damaged, whatever. In this case, I'm going to confirm that. And I can also, if I had 30, 40, 100, 200 checks and they all printed out okay, I could change the print status on all of them to confirmed if I wanted to. Then I'll say update. The final step I want to show you in this demonstration of the banking functionality in SAP Business One is the processing of your bank statements. So, in order to do that, I dive in here into my bank statements and external reconciliations. Now, there's a number of ways that I can do bank reconciliations. I'm able to import the bank statement information in and then have the system automatically reconcile those transactions for me. But there are a number of different ways of doing that depending on the bank processing mechanism that you've got, depending on the bank format that you've got, and so on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly show you how to do a manual reconciliation. So all I do is I go here and I select manual reconciliation. I choose my bank account number. I put in my ending balance on the bank account, which is 25,184.50, my ending date, and then I say OK. Now what it's going to ask me to do, it's going to ask me to select manually all those transactions until the difference is 0. And you can see right now I've matched up all of my transactions, my deposits, and the 3 other transactions that are showing on the statement. So I can now hit the reconcile button. It's just giving me a prompt that the statement number field is empty. I do want to go in and put in a statement page number. I'll hit reconcile again, and that's now done. My reconciliation has ended successfully. So that's the reconciliation process. Now I'm also able to go in and print a number of different documents off the reconciliation that I've done. I'm also able to call up that reconciliation again if I want to. But for now, in the demonstration process, that's as far as I kind of want to go with demonstrating the functionality in the banking system. Again, if you've got questions about the demonstrations that you've seen here, or any questions about any of the demonstrations, please feel free to click on the button which says Ask a Question.